So what we're going to do for this lesson is we're going to talk about breathing LEDs. It's also a red, green, blue, or RGB loop counter. And what this is going to do, when we've worked with the LEDs so far, we've turned them on and off, which was great, but we weren't allowed to dim them or make them at different power levels. So we're going to talk about how to do that on the Arduino. And the main thing is there's this thing called PWM. If you look at your Arduino, there's a little asterisk by some of the pin numbers on the Uno footprint, and they're marked PWM. It stands for pulse width modulation. And what that is those are special pins on your board that will allow you to turn them on and off very quickly. And the value of it ranges between 0 and 255 for a full duty cycle. What it does is these little graphs kind of show what it's like when it's at 0. The green lines indicate a timing interval, and then how long it's on is when it's high, and how long it's off is when it's low. And that will show you these little charts, and what it does is you perceive this as getting brighter and dimmer by basically turning this thing on and off really fast. You may have noticed that the brake lights on cars, when they have the LED lights, if you kind of move your head or if the object's flowing, you can kind of see it flashing. It drives me crazy when I'm driving, but that's the key thing to LEDs and how they can control the brightness of it, is they just turn them on and off really quickly. We have been working with digital write as our function to write to these. Well, now we're actually going to use what's called analog write. Analog is basically a changing voltage, and we're going to emulate that or simulate it through our microprocessor. So there's some stuff in here, tells you all about it. We're going to use analog write, the pin number, and the value between 0 and 255. 255 is always on, 0 is always off, and anywhere in between will control the brightness. So what we're going to do for the very first part of this project is hook up one LED. You can pick any one of your choice. I would probably choose the red one over on the left-hand side of the buttons, because we'll be adding other ones in. Remember, this resistor that we show on the breadboard drawing is already added into the Arduino, so it makes it real easy to wire it up. Ground wire, and also hooking up the pin. In the program code, I didn't go into a whole lot of explanation here, but it shows you the variables at the beginning, whereas this first one is int LED pin 11. And that's telling you that the LED, the positive side, is hooked up to pin 11. And the ground is going to the LED, so I'm not putting in as much detailed wiring instructions. And that's going to change because I actually have 3 different programs that I want you to run on here. So the first one, the red LED, copy and paste this code, take a look at what happens, and observe it. And other coding examples. I go into a little bit of another LED, which has actually got 3 of them built into one component, and that is located right next to those big rows of LEDs on the right hand side of your kit. There's one that looks clear, and it's actually got a red, a green, and a blue LED all in the same housing, and this is what the wires look like on the bottom. And we have it broken out obviously to a common, and which is your negative side, and then red, green, blue wires. On this code snippet, you notice where the LEDs are hooked up. So it's got the red one hooked up to pin 11, green one hooked up to pin 10, and blue one hooked up to pin 9. And then it's going to run some code which is going to change these values. And this also uses something called an array of numbers. You're actually inputting several numbers out at the same time of your function. We have a function down here named RGB color. And we're going to input 3 values, and then it jumps down to this function down here, and it takes those 3 values and writes them to the 3 pins, and then it jumps back out. So we're using a short little function in here to get this to operate. I'll have you paste that code, and then on the last one we have one. And I just changed this out for something else that I found. I think it'll work a little bit better. This one's actually going to do some color fading and do a gradual color changing on your LEDs. And it does it through loops. So it'll kind of change the operation of it. Do notice the pin numbers are changing each time, which is fine. You just have to make note of what they are in your software. This one's also got a timing delay, so you can change that variable and make it move faster or slower scrolling through the colors. But once you get the hookup on it, you're going to start with one LED, and then we're going to branch out into other LEDs. But what I want to show you is the challenges, because I've got, and I'm just warning you about a few of the cautions. Let me get this up. Okay, soon as okay, I'm going to scroll down here to my lesson 1.5. We got the breathing LEDs. I have 4 challenges this time. Challenge 1, when you have the project built up and the code uploaded, change the pin to a non-PWM pin. Notice on your Arduino, it's got little asterisks on there. It's a PWM pin. So you want to go on a digital pin that is not a PWM. And run the same code, upload it, and see what happens. Just so you recognize the difference between these two types of pins. For challenge 2, change the red LED back to the PWM pin and connect a green LEDs. So these are going to be separate LEDs, and run the second code, so the second section of code. Be certain to look at the pin values for the LED in the new code. Make them match, either change your wiring or change the code to match your wiring. So make sure that those are good. Then we're going to connect the RGB LED. That one is over on the right hand side of your Arduino kit board, right next to that row of blue LEDs. Connect it on the top right with the same pins you used here, because you're going to have a red, a green, and a blue LED. So run those wires over to the single LED along with the ground wire, and run code snippet 2 again, and you'll see a very different appearance with your LED all combined into one. And the last one will be copy and paste the third code section, third snippet of code, and observe what happens. It's actually using a loop command, and it's going to be gradually changing and fading the 3 colors. Also check the pin numbers, because they're different than the other projects. I did that for a reason. Start paying attention. You can learn from the code sometimes how the project is wired. That helps you out a lot. And that will get you through your 4 challenges. I'm hiding the quiz at the moment. I might access that later today, or I might activate it next week. I just got a few more questions I want to add in there on the project. So with that, I will let you start working on this lesson for dimming an LED, or we're calling it breathing LEDs. It's also a red, green, blue, or a RGB loop counter. If you want to, you can also Google Arduino and RGB LED, something you can find a whole bunch of different examples and different code sections that you can run for different. It gets really a lot of different options on how you can color fade and change these back and forth. But I just wanted to give you a little introduction to that. Next time you come back, we're going to start to talk about buzzers and making sound out of the Arduino kit, and then we're going to roll that into a simple game to give you something to experiment with. The game is a much more advanced coding, but I think we'll be able to tinker with it, do some damage, and maybe modify it to get it to behave in slightly different ways. So that's kind of what's coming up. But I will turn you loose on lesson 1.5, the breathing LEDs. And if you need help, remember you can always post it in the forum or contact a classmate, or do a little bit of Google searching and experimenting, and we can figure it out.